Hey everybody, welcome to Heels of Time. Who knows what episode this is? Whatever. And yeah, we're back to our late status, but that's okay. It's 4:20. Go figure. Yeah. But
What's the coincidence,
yeah,
though?
cool. Yeah, it is 100%. But today we're gonna revisit a topic that we did one of our first episodes on. It's on the Bale cycle, however you pronounce it, however you want to pronounce it. Um, when we were doing our research for our previous couple episodes, uh, Derek the Wise was like, I think I picked up on something, and then explained it out, and I was like, dang, that's we might want to revisit this and chat it up again. Agreed?
Most definitely. And I want to add, it's a little bit of impromptu, but happy anniversary, my friend. So this is about the same time that we
Yep,
started off.
that
We're
is
ready
true.
for Wheel of Time Season 1.
Right?
So, and things with the Wheel of Time show seems to be, a little off rails, and we're waiting for them to, get back on track so that we can once again get back to
Continue.
that.
Yep.
But for now, we're doing what we've been doing,
Yep.
and we're discussing the mythology that we have. So I think it's fitting that we're doing the Bale cycle, and we're coming back. Uh, one trip around the sun. So, do you want to start?
Let me. Yeah, I was gonna say I'll start. Do a recap of what the cycle is ish, and you take on the Wheel of Time, and maybe we'll crisscross a little bit. We'll, how we usually do things.
Perfect.
So, without further ado, yes, it's the Bale cycle, and it's quite interesting. It's an ancient text. Urgrit, I've probably pronounced that incorrectly, but it's
We'll go with that.
yeah, we'll go with it. It's ancient Syria, or in that region.
Mhm.
So it's a long poem, really. However, it's in cuneiform, and it's not all there.
That's
So
right,
it's
that's right.
it's bits and pieces, but there's enough to where we kind of, sort of, ish think we know what's going on. It is a really funky story, though, and unfortunately, I think the chunks that are missing fill in the gaps that make it less funky. So
That's true.
yeah, and actually, I think I discovered something else too, which is maybe really cool. But anyway,
All right.
so Bale, cool, right? You have no idea who he is. That's perfectly fine. He is one of the gods, right? And he wasn't like the main god. Not the big guy, but he wants to be. So the whole kit and caboodle is he, as I look at him in reading my research, because this was not part of my background. This is expanding my knowledge set. He kind of, for me, mixes in a little bit of Thor, a little bit of Ares. You could maybe throw even Zeus in there a little bit. What he kind of presides over, you would almost say throw in a little bit of Demeter, which is the Greek goddess. So he's an interesting kind of amalgamation, or at least he may have been
Sounds like it,
first.
yeah.
So who knows who was first, second, third, fourth, and who got influences from where. But
Right.
technically, he also, if you think about it, could also be kind of thrown into the Bible as well. So this this concept of this god has been around for a very, very long time. I think the cuneiform was found in like 1929, but I think they carbon dated it back to like 1300 BC or something like that. And
Wow.
I may be a little off on the time frame, but whatever. It's over 1000 BCE. I know that for sure. And they think it predates that by a heck of a lot, because verbal, kind of like the Iliad and the Odyssey, it was mostly verbal and then written down eventually. Who knows how far later? So
Got it.
originally means son of Dagon. Again, pronunciations, guys, this I not my cup of tea. But anyway, ironically though, his father figure is not anywhere in the text. He's not a player in this poem at all. Period. So you got Baal off to the side. Excellent. Cool. Technically, his name translated as Lord, so to speak. In text,
That makes sense.
yep, it's the rider of clouds, the almighty Lord of the earth. Again, he's a fertility god. Yes, the thunderstorm. But when I say, how does that have to do with anything? Because you got Thor, cool, and you're like, why would you say Ares? Because he is pretty aggressive. He's like the most like vigorous and aggressive of the gods, and just he likes to get in, not necessarily war, but he doesn't take any crap from anybody, and he's, I don't want to say volatile either, but no, if he sees something, he's gonna lay the hammer down.
Is
so
it
to
fair
speak.
to say? Is it fair to say that as the god of war, he would be the antithesis of peace?
That would be maybe a better description. Thank you. That's a good one. And you can say, well, how does fertility come into effect? Harvest time. So he does all of those things. So this isn't seemingly a culture that is just one for one. They kind of have a little bit of a mix. So cool.
And one could hypothesize, I don't know, wasn't there,
Right.
that it could be their reliance on the seasonal storms
Right.
to cause their crops to flourish. Might
Or
have
not.
something, or not.
Mhm.
Might have something to do with the titles that they
Got it.
bestowed upon
Yep.
Baal. Right?
Correct. Yep. So, you may have even seen a little a clay figure of him. When I saw it, I was like, "Oh, I've actually seen that before. I just didn't know what it
Yep.
was." He's just up there like this. But to me, I'll be honest, I thought it was like it sounds really bad, but a bad clay figure of Zeus. No, it's actually him. He actually holds a thunderbolt. That's what he's known for. It's like
That's really
holding a
cool.
thunderbolt. So I'm like,
Oh,
interesting. Okay, that's interesting. So, fast forward a little bit, and eventually, the whole story comes down to Yam. Yamm. Sometimes they drop the M, but it's double M's. So, okay. So, who is this guy? He's a mega god, right? He's like son of El. El is the big guy. He is the mega god. He is the top of the power chain, right?
L is on the top.
Yes. So you want to say that probably in the hierarchy of power, like actual power, it probably Baal, and Yam are probably 1 and 2.
Pretty similar.
They're up there. So El knows that eventually he's going to be surpassed by somebody. Everybody thinks it should be Baal because he's a little bit better, I guess. And that part's a little iffy, but for whatever reason, they're surprised that he actually goes with Yam. Even though that's his son, that's the weird part. Weird. Whatever. So Baal's like, shoot, okay, I understand. It is what it is. Fine. So when it comes to Yam's turn, though, he's kind of a jerk. He rules as pretty much a dictator. He tells all the other gods what to do. They have to do all their labors. They have to do all their things, and there is no sideways glances or anything. It's like my way or, I mean, I can't really put them down, but there'll be consequences. What the consequences are, who knows? But
And this is Yam.
this is Yam after he took over after El.
And am I correct in this? I believe Yam is depicted as kind of like a sea serpent or
Correct.
a sea dragon. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, he's the Sea Man. Yep, AKA could look at him as like Poseidon-esque.
Oh. Oh, that's very. Oh, yes, yes, I see that.
Now,
Hmm.
it's not
Absolutely.
quite it's not the brother thing, but it's father, son, but whatever.
Sure.
Oh, all good. So, eventually, though, Mama, again, this is mom as in, like, seemingly the mom of them all, like everybody. Again, this is a little funkiness. It's gonna also Asherah. Again, if I don't know if I would pronounce her name correctly, think of her as like I would consider her like Gaia,
Okay. Not like a Hera, more like.
like the mother of like everybody.
Got it.
So when, and this is the important part, when El uh, bequeaths his throne, he kind of separates the power to El. Got El over here, but he also gave power to a judge Nahar. So it's kind of like should be a check and balance system, is how I'm interpreting it. But it doesn't really flow that way. El, even though he gave it like that, Yam is still the hand slaps. He won't take it. So following the protocol, she goes to Judge Nahar and is like, listen, can you please, get my children, aka the rest of the gods, out from like under his thumb and like make things a little bit better. And he's like, makes sense. Yam? No. Not gonna happen. It was like, no. And so they're trying to work out negotiations, and this is where it becomes real ruthless. Even though that's kind of his mom, mom's is like, I'll offer you me. He's like,
I understand.
Cool.
But remember, audience, when they're recording these kinds of things, sometimes a deity could be a nation.
Right.
So it doesn't
right.
mean like literally the
This
mother
is-
could be. This
yeah.
is where he came from, or something
Right.
like that.
Yep. So I'm gonna read a little bit here. So
Go for it.
it's actually kind of cool because I think you'll say, oh, again, pronunciation. Sorry, audience, but it is what it is.
This will be the Theo pronunciation.
Yeah, right. Now, mighty Baal, son of Dagon, desired the kinship of the gods. He contended with Prince Yam, Nahar, son of El, but kindly El, father Sham, that's his nickname, decided in case of the favor of his son. He gave the kingship to Prince Yam. He gave the power to judge Nahar. Fearsome Yam came to rule the gods with an iron fist. He caused them labor and to toil under his reign. They cried under their mother, Asherah, Lady of the Sea. They convinced her to confront Yam and to intercede on their behalf. Okay. Ashrath went to the presence of Prince Yam. She came before Judge Nahar and begged that he release his grip upon the gods, her sons. But mighty Yam declined her request. She offered favors to the tyrant, but powerful Nahar softened not his heart. Finally, kindly Asherah, who loves her children, offered herself to the sea god. She offered her own body to the Lord of Rivers. Yam-Nahar agreed to this, and Naharath returned to the source of the two rivers, because mind you, this is where they were sitting, between the ocean and the two rivers. She went home to the court of El. She came before the Divine Council, otherwise the Pantheon, and spoke of her plan to the gods, her children. Baal was infuriated by her speech. He was angered at the gods who would allow such a plot. He would not consent to surrendering great Aharat to the tyrant Yam-Nahar. He swore to the gods that he would destroy Prince Yam. He would lay to rest the tyranny of Judge Nahar. Yam-Nahar was made aware of the words of Baal, and he sent two messengers to the court of El. And then the whole poem goes on. So,
Yes.
as you can see, this is where the conflict started.
Wow. Oh, that's really cool.
So it's pretty deep, pretty intense. So, needless to say, they battle. And Baal wins. Sort of. But in between, there's some crazy stuff that happens in between palaces, and I gotta have a palace, but you can't have a palace. Whatever. It comes to find out that he's like, oh, I'm gonna be put down by a magical weapon, so I gotta get all the weapons out. It was crazy. So, needless to say, dispose of him. Now other people want Baal, right? Because now he's got the target on his back, and not everybody disagreed with Man. So, who comes around? Mot. Who's Mot? Mot is death. He's the personification of death in their religion. So now you have a life being, Baal, with a death being, Mot. So cool. Baal cracks his hands. Polar opposites. So, cracks his knuckles, ready to go down. Mega brawl. Man, this is like, I guess it's like a knockdown, drag out. However, Mot wins. Actually eats Baal. Like, nibble. Eats it. So, you're like, holy crap, that's unbelievable. How is that even possible? It's God stuff. Now, that being said, of course, there's the other side of it that people love Baal, man. He had sisters and stuff. His mega sister, Anath, also called the Maiden. Who does that remind you of, Derek?
Artemis. Oh, the Maiden?
Yeah. Greek mythology. I'm putting you on the spot.
In Greek mythology, I would say Artemis
Bingo.
Is a maiden, right?
Yep.
I got it? Oh,
you got it. So what does she do? She gets furious. And she actually kills him. Kills Mot. Grinds him up and then disperses him like grain. So the interesting part of this is that you have Death, who killed Life, who's now dead, who gets ground up, gross, spread out to make life again. So what happens? All of a sudden, Baal comes back. He's reborn. But so is Mot, because think of him as Deadpool. He just finds all of his body parts and comes. Because again, think about it, these guys are still immortal. They're not like they can really die, so to speak. They just have to be reborn over a matter of time. So,
right.
Boom, boom. Baal comes up, and now you have, I would say, a happy family again, but everybody has died, come back, and then supposedly you have two issues of thought here. You have the cycle, like the I would say storm cycle, but you have the fertility cycle, where Baal will die. Mot will take over. You would think that if you're in our hemisphere, would be like the winter, and then going into spring, summer, and then fall, winter, and then it just keeps going back and forth. Now, according to the ancient Syrians, or the folks in the ancient Syrian lands, they thought that this battle took place every 7 years. Not necessarily yearly, but every 7 years. Maybe there was something going on in ancient society, or maybe time kind of gets shifted over the legend myth. So who knows? But that's the Baal cycle in a nut form. That being said, as I'm counting up now, again, they have a pantheon of gods, right?
Right.
Just like we have a bunch of Forsaken.
Yeah.
So
you're about to,
I'm counting the gods in the story. Now again, I'm not perfect, so I may be wrong, but when I'm counting them up, there's 12 players in the story.
Nice.
With maybe 13 depending on wording and how I look at it. So I'm like, also kind of dings a little bell here.
Yeah.
And in seeing what all of these different gods had sphere of influences over, very reminiscent of other cultures as well. So one would be like a sun god, one would be the dawn and the dusk, one would be a moon, one would be a maiden, one would be, storms, death. Um, I'm looking and I'm like, that sounds very, very familiar to like Greek, Roman, Norse, and a little bit of a little bit different, but close enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's kind of interesting to me, and I know that even the cultures of South America had very similar deities as well, especially the sun and the moon, which, I mean, it makes sense. They're the two of the biggest celestial things in the sky, other than the stars, so that does make sense. But is how different all these cultures were, and if you want to think about one of our other, this is off the side, by the way, one of our other talks that we did, talked about trade routes and how everything kind of was like a global economy. Interesting to see how all these stories are very, very similar. A little bit different, but everybody puts their own little twist on, a recipe. It's almost, to me, it sounds very, very similar to other cultures that we've discovered while we've been doing our talks over the past year. But that's just me. I thought that was cool.
I like that a lot. I like that a lot. That was a gift that you gave our audience. So, yeah, think about that.
But needs to say, my cycle is on the mythology side pretty much done. Derek, take it away on the Wheel of Time side. Do you see any similarities, or you have a theory?
Absolutely. And I just, my mind is blown by what you were telling me about the actual mythology out there. So bear with me a little bit. That's really cool. That was a really cool talk. So, anyway, yes, back to Wheel of Time. Wow.
Yep.
So let's start back with our story of, it starts with Baal, but let's look before Baal. What do I mean? Well, you said Yam is ruling for a period, and it's actually kind of terrible in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at what's some similarities here. Well, we have El. He's kind of the head honcho, but he's not really doing stuff, right?
Not seemingly.
So jump ahead. You have this character, this thunderer, if you will, Baal, and he is going to ultimately come do battle with the dragon and ultimately defeat the dragon. So, and presumably eventually the dragon will be reborn, not in the Baal cycle. So maybe that's why Robert Jordan had to pick up the pen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, I could have been talking about Wheel of Time, right? It's a wizard with the ability to channel lightning and thunder, fighting a dragon. Well, Lews Therin was the dragon in our case, and he was in the Age of Legends. Now, what's interesting enough when you mentioned El is Ishamael, or the protagonist, or rather the antagonist in the story. His original name in the Age of Legends is Elan. So we have El, another player in the Baal cycle, that we failed to mention the first time that we did this shindig.
Yep.
Well, this is what's interesting. The dragon, that's his name, Lews Therin. The Telamon in his name means the dragon. I think I'm going to go as far as to say it means the first dragon, because we have Amerlin, but we also have Tamerlin for the first Amerlin. So it might have been something more like Lews Therin Elamon. So like El is there again.
Sure.
So we have this El character kind of being a primordial character behind the scenes. So if we start there, we see that this Elan declares himself against the dragon. He goes to the Hall of Servants, and this reminds me of how Yam has a temple and good old Baal doesn't. So the dragon humbles Elan in the Hall of Servants. And I believe this is the point where they have battled their first battle, and Ishamael is now his name. So he's not Baal yet, technically. He's Ishmael. So it's kind of like El. He's not really the father, though. He's still the antagonist, but he has not decided to directly overtake the power. So in the end, in a twist, right, Yam goes on a terrible spree. He's not slain by Baal immediately. It's kind of like a reversal. When it's time for Baal's time to pass, rather, it's now time for Yam to die. So Luz Theron is slain as the dragon at the very end of that cycle instead of, like, I don't know, midway or in the beginning even.
Yeah.
So Luz Theron dies, ending that cycle, and now Ishmael, which is kind of like El in a way, because he's the king of the Forsaken in the Old Age, which, if you look at the pantheon of these characters and you think, well, these 12 might have been the Forsaken then, and then El being the leader, well, that would be Ishmael, so there's your El. Well, once he decides to kill the dragon, he's not Ishmael, he is Baal-Zaman. What do I mean? His goal is now different. And so I guess you could say, well, he was Ishmael before killing him up to that point. That's fine. But I'd say after this, it's not the same. And even up to this point, he's not the same because the Dark One has already been killed. So that's another kind of like, well, this is interesting. The Dark One's not been killed, pardon me, but defeated, right? Locked away. Well, if we're looking at some kind of grand stage play taking place, well, if the Dark One is off stage, someone else has to be on stage, moonlighting
Doing
it, right?
Yep.
So at that point, Ishmael is no longer the head of the Forsaken. He becomes Baal-Zaman, who is the head of all evil in all the world. Okay, he goes completely insane, and he wreaks havoc. This is what's interesting. He has a cycle. Baal-Zaman has a cycle. He comes once every 1,000 years, which that just sounds, celestial and all, like, right? Big time, deep time. But he can come only for 40 years after that, and then he disappears again. So you have that 40 number, which is usually a very, very biblical number, right? So that's interesting there. So he has a big seasonal. So he comes back and he wreaks havoc during this guy Arthur Hawkwing's time. Before that, he wreaks havoc during the Trolloc Wars. Later on, he wreaks havoc, and maybe I got that backwards, during the War of 100 Years. So there's these various times where he comes and messes things up. And, the last time he comes is when things are culminating in the book, right? So he's already been there and he's messing things up. Yep. So that's Baal-Zaman, right? So we have Ishmael, El, Baal-Zaman. Certainly there's going to be Maz. And Baal has slain the dragon. So who's his next character to fight? Well, this is where there's a twist in the story. This is where Robert Jordan must have said, well, Yam must be part of the cycle, right? If he's in the story at all, he must be part of the cycle. So Yam has to come back at some point too. So guess what? Rand comes back. And Rand is the dragon. And he is the lord of the two rivers, right? So he would be kind of like a son of Dagon in a way. Son of the rivers. So he's related to Poseidon as the dragon, right? And we actually talked about that in the show. So I really like that you brought that up. So that Yam is kind of like this Poseidon figure in a way, with some give and take. So with all that going on, we have a reversal, and we have the Rand as the dragon now. The dragon slays Baal instead of Baal slaying dragon. What's cool about this is he dies in the same kind of way that is depicted of Mott dying, he is burned into ashes, and the ashes are scattered. So, and that's just the depiction of what, there's no body left, is what they say. So, yeah, so that's very cool. I also kind of reminiscent of like how you kill a Dracula, right? Stake through the heart, and ultimately Kalendor was that stake. So, and he turned to ash just like Dracula would, right? So that's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, well, we have Ishmael, El, Baal Zaman, Baal, and now we're going to have Moradin, death, as Mot, death. Oh, that's very interesting. We have all the key players here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure the other players are there as well. The maiden is there. Well, maybe that's Avienda, the maiden of the spear. But at any rate, let's dissect this a little bit further. Mot is Ishmael, is Baal Zaman, but now he's someone else. And when he was Ishmael, his prototypical story arc and desire was, I'm going to be the lord of the lands, and I have my lieutenants, and I will divide up the land, and that's it. You know, I will rule. By the time he's Baal, it's not about rule anymore. It's gone. The good old dark days are gone. The big old cities have been destroyed. There's not anything left to rule. So we have this different situation. Okay, I am the ultimate evil ruling on the world. I'm not the god of all these other godlings. I am the lord of the land. So he's Baal Zaman. And speaking of that, in the book, Robert Jordan pens that Baal Zaman gets confused whether he is indeed, he may think he is the Dark One. He may believe that. So that's also interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That fits. And then last, when he's Moradin, his goal isn't to be the head evil anymore as Baal Zaman. His goal is to just end it all. He wants it all to be over. So I think a lot of that fits. I think the names are really a powerful connection. Real quick, what do you think about that?
Names have power, man.
Well said. Well said. So I got one thing for you.
I got two for you, so that's cool. So go for it.
Well, this is a theory for you and our audience.
Oh.
So hopefully you like it. I hope they like it. So Moradin, when he comes back as Moradin, he is beyond nihilistic. He sees the only reason, like, you're like, well, why isn't he suicidal then? Well, he knows that he'll come back eventually. So he needs to stay true to his goal because the ends justify the means kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
He wants all of it to end, all of it to just be over forever. Well, why would that be the case? This is what happened. This is my theory, everybody, and spoiler alerts. When Rand kills Baal Zaman, right before he dies, Baal Zaman reaches in and grabs all of the power he can channel. That's the important part of this. After that, it's not enough. And he cries out to the Dark One, almost like, the Savior and the Lord, why have you forsaken me? Almost kind of a situation. I need more. I need more. Well, he gets it. And with some speculation says that the Dark One gave him as much of the Dark One's power as Rand was channeling through Kalendor. So that's insane.
It's a heavy amount.
So this is actually really two things, come to think about it, because I just realized on the spot something else. So number one, what happens when you channel as much of the one power as you possibly can channel?
Poof.
It happened on the show to Nynaeve and Egwene, remember?
Mm-hmm.
You might not die, but you get burnt
Poofed.
out, right?
Yeah, you get sizzled.
Yeah. I heard the poof.
Yep.
But I want to make it clear, you might not die.
Yeah, not a literal poof, but you poof out, you blink.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So if you do live this, can you channel again after that?
Probably not.
Probably not. So
Mm.
that happens right when he dies. So they give us a hint, okay? When he comes back as Moradin, he is still able to channel this immense amount of the true power from the Dark One. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's interesting. So that didn't change. And we actually have a theory about this give and take with the Dark One's power when we were talking about what might happen after the series, right?
Mm-hmm.
For example, the Dark One might not exactly have control over his access to this world so much as just the influence part.
Mm-hmm.
So if the Dark One gave power, he might not be able to take it back necessarily, right?
Yep.
So interesting. Well, here's the thing with Moradin. Here's the theory. Sizzled dies. Given immense power before he died. New body. Still has that immense power, Theo.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think he was still sizzled?
Probably wasn't.
I think he was.
I think he was.
I think Moradin came back as Moradin. Balzamon came back as Moradin.
Right.
He's in this new body.
Yeah.
And he goes to reach the one power, and he can't. Why? Because he was burnt out as Balzamon.
Mm.
What does that mean? What's the consequence? And this might have to do with Balzamon's weird birth cycle. This means, in my theory, every time Balzamon comes back now, he will not be able to channel.
Which, in a way, is almost what he wanted.
No, the opposite. So he
wanted nothingness, right?
He wanted nothingness. So imagine this. Here's a part that you're missing, though. There's a difference in being gentled and not being able to channel in the first place.
All right, true. I'll give you that.
If you're gentled, you have like an itch that you can never scratch.
Right.
And it never dulls. You
True.
can never get used to it.
True.
And men that are gentled usually only live a handful of years afterwards.
Right.
So imagine being reborn over and over and over again without the will to live.
Yes, that would suck.
That's the ultimate torture.
Yes.
So I think that's my theory. I think in that moment as Balzamon, Rand burnt him out.
Mm.
Now all that he has left is to channel this immense ocean of the true power, which is intoxicating and has all these other faults that go with it. So what do you think?
Interesting theory, dude. It would make sense that if you got burned out as a human, quote, I'm putting human in quotes,
Yeah.
that his human form as he gets reborn would be messed up.
Yeah, exactly.
And that would make sense. Flip side, you could also say...
He wouldn't be reborn with the memories, though. That's not what I'm saying.
Right. But just...
He would just have this itch he could
Yeah,
never
can't
scratch.
get.
And
So here's the interesting part. So you almost got to one of the things I was going to ask you about.
all right, go for it.
So, you know how you say that you've got cycles, right?
Yeah.
And if you looked at one of our previous episodes, we said like the Dark One and Rand. My theory is that they're like one and the same, but they got split.
Right.
They come back together and then split. Cycle, right?
Yeah.
So, who's to say that the new, well, I don't know if we call what we called him, but the Dark One Rand conglomerate.
Shyran.
Shyran, yeah, it'd be hilarious.
Shytan ran. Shyran.
Shyran. Shabupa. So, who's to say that over time they don't change and flip the script and then reset everything?
So you're saying there could even be a time where the dragon is actually evil,
Mm-hmm.
and Baal, the Lord, is the good guy.
Right.
I like that. So let me piggyback off of that, and this actually might answer our question when we were theorizing the story arc for the Dark One / Shyran. So imagine this. What if that little hole in Rand's eye was
Mhm.
immutable, right? Couldn't change it.
Right.
Well, we have a solution to that problem, don't we? What if Moradin is reborn in 3,000 years?
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, there's this ocean of an access to the Dark One.
Right.
All at once.
Boom.
Boom, right? And at that point, I mean, he wouldn't have any memories of whatever. This kid would be incarnated with these apparently just godly abilities that no one could explain, and it couldn't be rivaled.
Mm-hmm.
And because the only one with similar power to that would be Rand, and his power would be a fraction compared to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that would be very interesting. And the question would be, did Rand do a good enough job at making the Dark One guy Shane, so to speak?
Right.
Did he cleanse, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying an alternate theory could actually fit, because there's actually nothing saying that Moradin won't be born again.
Right.
So the only thing we know about him is, why did they switch their bodies? This is a big spoiler. And Robert Jordan once said that he's not going to say, but what he said was, one body really wanted to die and the other body really wanted to live. So because of that, they're able to do that soul swap. And what do you bet that's just how it works? Like, you know, the bodies they have, the Dark One like would keep bodies on hand,
Sure.
just in case
Something went down. Yep.
So what do you bet these are people that are so downtrodden and tortured
Mhm.
that they would rather be dead than alive, right?
Mm-hmm. Sell your soul to the devil, right?
Yes. That fits, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So I would do anything to get out of this body. Oh, anything? All right. Well,
There you go.
I'll just swap you with the guy that just died, and you're dead now. And yeah, you see, the temporality of it always made me think, well, like, how? Oh, okay, he had to have him just ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
But what's so special? The whole idea of the Dark One, and the whole mythos of like Mephisto and making a deal and all of that kind of stuff has a free will element, and that's what Wheel of Time's trying to convey. And that was always counter to me. But what if these souls are so tortured, right? That's where the free will comes in. They have to voluntarily give up their body.
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
Instead of just
Yeah,
stealing
right.
it, because you're going to probably have some type of rejection in there.
Yeah, right, exactly. It wouldn't work.
Nope.
So, well, we've drifted afield a little bit,
Meh.
but so
We
let me
usually
just-
do.
Yeah. So let me just rein it in a second and say, I think we've thoroughly addressed the Bale cycle. This was a lot of fun.
Yep.
It's clearly in the story. It's not a knockoff. It's not a cheap steal. It was someone very seriously thinking about this and trying to incorporate it into the
Mhm.
story and making a big. And by the way, this is an American story. Remember
Right.
that. That's
Yes.
important. And I'm not trying to say that to say Americans are better or whatever, but you have to think about the themes that will be in an American story.
Yep.
So the American mythos has to come along for the ride, right?
Yes, it does.
So thank you all for joining us, Theo. That was a
Mhm.
wonderful rendition of the Bale cycle.
Thank you.
I learn a little bit every time I hear that.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate your comments. And everyone, I hope you enjoyed what we had to say about the Wheel of Time, and I hope it enriched your Wheel of Time experience. Until next time, we are the Hills of Time. Please join us next Thursday on Twitch for a couple of middle-aged guys playing some retro video games.
Which is pretty hilarious,
So,
but
yeah,
whatever.
I think so. All right, so either way, Thursday or Sunday.